Welcome back to How to Craft Fair. This is 25 craft fair tips for 2025. For this video, I got a little bit of help from some friends, so keep an eye out for those shout outs as we go through the video. But without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right in. My first tip is to have a mirror at your booth if you sell anything wearable. I'm talking about clothing, jewelry, headwear, hats, anything like that. Make sure that the placement of the mirror makes sense at your booth. You want to think about it from the shopper's perspective, and you want it to be flattering for the shopper. You want to avoid placing mirrors low, like just, flat on a table, so that people have to look down in order to see them. Because when we tuck our chins in and we look down, our faces are not very flattering. All right, so I can tell you that from somebody with multiple chins, and it's not a good look. So just remember that the angle and the placement of the mirror can play a huge role in determining whether or not people think your items are a match for themselves. Tip number 2 is to create a year-long event calendar for your business. Ideally, you want to do this at the very beginning of the year, and you want to have your shows booked for pretty much the remainder of the year early on. The reason why is that you can create one of these event calendars, especially if you're a vendor who travels around a bit in your region or area. Give people some kind of a brochure or a printout that features your branding that lets them know where you'll be throughout the year. This is going to help create a loyal following of customers who will come to visit your booth in person, particularly spread out in different areas. So go ahead and try designing one on Canva, and be sure to incorporate your brand's colors, your fonts, your business name, and what you make. It's important to put that somewhere on your handouts to kind of just reinforce people what you're selling at your booth and remind them who you are. Also, don't forget to include how people can find you. So some sort of contact information, some social media handles, just some way for people to reach out to you. Basically, you want to leave no doubt as to who you are, what you create, and how people can find you. Think of those 3 elements: who you are, what you create, and how people can find you. Now, here's a fantastic example from my buddy Mike. You can find him at MB2Photo on Facebook and some other social media platforms. This is a well-designed, easy to read, and it makes for a great handout at events, as well as the perfect graphic to post on social media. So, like I said, this is a fantastic example that I wanted to include from Mike at MB2 Photography. And, go ahead and get some inspiration from this so that you can level up your handouts at your booth. Tip number 3 is to add a roll of magnetic tape to your emergency bag and consider utilizing it in various applications throughout your booth. On the channel, we talk a lot about how to use zip ties and even duct tape for various applications, but don't forget to have a roll of magnetic tape, because sometimes the other applications don't necessarily work with what you're trying to accomplish at your booth, and this can just give you one more option to utilize for signage or decor at your booth. All right, so for tip number 4, this is sort of like, I don't want to say a trending type of suggestion, but I think something that the craft fair community is moving more towards, and that is natural decorative elements at a booth. There's a variety of ways that you can add some personality to your booth, with things like patterned tablecloths being a little bit more dated. So instead, you should shift more towards a natural look, and you can consider using elements like wood slices, driftwood, dried flowers, plants, honestly real or fake plants, pine cones, moss, stones, burlap fabric, woven baskets, twine, garland, and rustic signage made from reclaimed wood in order to create some sort of a warm, earthy, and inviting atmosphere for your booth. So like I said, I think there's a little bit more of a natural push and natural trend for booths moving forward. So these are just some options that you can consider for your booth, and think about how you can incorporate some of these things that'll tie into what you're selling well at your booth. All right, for tip number 5, this one was kind of fun to do because it's based on the results of a poll I conducted recently. And for this tip, I'd recommend that you stop using the @everyone or @followers tags on Facebook if you have a business page on that platform. Now, if you aren't familiar with what this is, basically it's when you receive a notification on Facebook that a page creator has tagged you in their comments or in one of their posts. So when you go to check to see what this is, typically, it's just a normal post with the page owner, essentially desperately trying to get it seen by their page followers. So as we know, sometimes Facebook can kind of stifle the reach on that platform. You might have thousands of followers, but your reach might only be literally dozens or maybe 100 of those followers. So what these page owners will do is use these @everyone tags to basically push it out to everybody. Now, when you're on the receiving end of this, it's a little bit of a different feeling, okay? So I did a poll that asked people how they feel about getting tagged in these kind of posts that say @everyone or @followers. Now, the results showed that only 13% of people said that they like it when a page owner uses these types of tags. 13%. 43% found themselves somewhere in the middle where they're sort of indifferent. They don't really, kind of care either way, but it's definitely not going to make them click to see the post. They just don't really care. 45%, the majority, said that they don't like these notifications at all. So as you can see, the results pretty much speak for themselves. It's much more of a turnoff to your fan base to tag everyone in your post as opposed to just going without these tags and making posts like normal. Tip number 6 is to learn how to set goals for your business. Discover what healthy versus unhealthy goals are for a small business owner and pursue them. Maybe your goals are something tangible, like a specific set of numbers or statistics. Like, for example, like I want to participate in this many events, or I want to generate this much in sales. Maybe it's something that isn't a specific figure, so perhaps you'd like to overcome your fear of speaking to the general public. That's kind of a lot of obstacle that a lot of newer vendors face at first, is they don't just have that courage yet to put themselves out there and speak for themselves and sort of brag about their work, more or less. Whatever your goals are, write them down and put them out into the world so that it helps to hold you accountable throughout the remainder of the year as you pursue these goals. All right, for tip number 7, we're going to talk about a booth layout, and that's when you have a U-shaped booth. So we see these a lot. This is one of the most common types of booths where basically the tables approach the aisle. Now, I want you to think about the end of your booth, the very part of your booth that's touching the aisle, as end caps, almost like retail end caps. Think about the ways that you can showcase featured products to essentially give the passerbys a quick glimpse of the potential inside your booth. So you'll want to include some of the very best designs that you have on these end caps in order to help draw customers into your booth and draw attention towards your booth. So again, just look at it as like a retail mindset. If you need some inspiration, honestly, go to like your local grocery store and think about how their end caps are designed to pull you in. There actually might be some sale items or some limited time only items on those end caps, and there's a reason why this is being done, okay? It's meant to draw attention. So think about a shopping mall, think about a grocery store, or even like department stores, how they're designed to pull you in with that initial look at an end cap, and try to emulate that at your booth if possible. Tip number 8, don't underestimate white tablecloths. Yes, most vendors these days are going with black tablecloths, and there's good reason for that. It's an attractive, formal appearance that has the benefit of hiding dirt or scuffs better than light colors, so you kind of get that longevity with a darker tablecloth. However, a white tablecloth is fresh and bright. These kinds of linens do especially well with a country or farmhouse or chic booths that are accented by warm colored displays, items, and marketing materials. So sometimes they're paired up with kind of warm, earthy tones, and that can look really, really sharp. The best example that we have of this method on the channel was booth review number 11, a business by the name of Made by Moonlight based in Tennessee. The combination of the white linens with the natural looking earth tones created a tremendous environment. So just be sure to keep color combinations at the front of your mind as a strategy that you can implement in 2025. For tip number 9, be clear about your return policy at your booth and honestly on social media, on your website, all over the place. Set the expectations up front so that there's no confusion or misunderstanding down the road. This will save you from potential lost time and added stress that may come from return disputes with a customer. Consider adding some sort of signage at your booth and a statement on your website about your return policy. If you're going to do this at your booth, obviously the best spot to do this is your checkout area. So I recommend that all vendors with bigger booths, okay, so not the vendors that have like a 6-foot table, an 8-foot table, you kind of need a bigger booth to have a dedicated checkout area. But if you do, definitely this is where you want to post that type of signage to let customers know what that return policy is. All right, for tip number 10, this is kind of a fun one to talk about because on the channel we talk a lot about very physical aspects of booths, tangible numbers, things like that, but this is sort of a mindset goal. And I want you to surround yourself with people who are going to support you, encourage you, and just in general share good vibes with you. Craft fairs and really being a small business owner in general is a tremendous amount of work. We all know that. And sometimes things don't go according to plan. So take this cheesy analogy and run with it. But basically, when things don't go well and tough times happen, would you rather have people around you who are going to remind you that the sun is going to shine again? Or do you want to surround yourself with cynics who only add lightning and thunder and wind to your already rainy day? So just consider that, the people that you choose to have in your circle play a massive role in your outlook on life. This is your dream and it's worth protecting. So only let people in your circle who deserve to be in it with you. All right, for tip number 11, we're going to talk about how to keep track of sales. You want to keep track of all your sales, no matter what level of expertise or experience of a vendor that you are. Okay, so there's 3 main ways to go about this. The first is to have SKU numbers and barcodes on all products. That's kind of like the highest tier that you can go to. The second is to write out price tags. And when you do this, you just want to be sure that you're including the product name, the price, and the size, if applicable, on the price tag. And whenever a customer makes a purchase, simply remove the tag and set it in a Ziploc bag or some kind of container so that after the show, you can review and tally up all your purchases following the event. The third method is to have some sort of a sales sheet at the event where you write down this type of information in real time as it happens. So some people prefer to keep sales sheets as opposed to pulling off tags and things like that. If you like this, check out the Etsy link below in the video description if you'd like to see the one that I've designed. Just be sure to utilize some kind of method, one of these 3 that we've talked about, so that you can keep track of the exact tally on all the items that you've sold. This is going to help when you're planning out your event and even just the lead up to the event, what kind of things that you should be creating in between events, what's selling, what's not selling, what you should kind of fade out, new ideas that you can introduce. This has a massive impact on what you should be creating for your craft fairs. All right, so for tip number 12, if you have some kind of a checkout stand at your booth, this is obviously the best spot to have some kind of a sign that lists all the prices at your booth. Sometimes I'll see these price list signs in odd places at booths. Now, the most logical spot for these is wherever the transaction is going to take place. Okay, so you just want to make sure that it's in that area, if not multiple areas in your booth. Now, if you utilize these types of pricing signs at your booth, you definitely have to combine these signs with some sort of other pricing method. So either individually marking all of your items or having a zoned pricing setup where basically you have like items grouped together and then you have one sign that kind of encompasses that zone of products. All right, so you want to pair a big pricing board up with one of those other 2 methods so that pricing is clear throughout the booth. And then you're also giving people that final reminder at the checkout stand. All right, for tip number 13, we're going to talk about hiding designs. Now, of course, you do not want to do this, but it's a shame how often this happens at craft fairs. Let's imagine a table at a craft fair. A lot of times, vendors will have product kind of laid down from front to back. And if it's done correctly, there's a height variation as you go further back into the table so that you can see the designs as you look further into that table. Now, unfortunately, a lot of times we'll see vendors sort of just leave things all at one level or pretty much one height, and they're stacking them with depth from the front of the table to the back of the table. This is hiding so much of the design, and you think about all the work that you've done to create something, to design something, to bring it to the show, then to put it out there, and then to hope that you sell it. You're not doing yourself any kind of justice when most of your design is hidden by other designs. Okay, so you just want to let your product shine. A lot of times we can accomplish this by just adding some vertical space, some height at the booth, some sort of risers that like stagger up as you look deeper into the table. So just keep this in mind. I know this is a really basic tip, you guys, but again, you've put so much work into creating these things and bringing them to the show. Do them justice by making sure that people can see most of the design of every product at your booth. All right, for tip number 14, something that we haven't really talked about too much on the channel. If you're not sure on whether or not you should be charging taxes on your items, you want to consult your local city or state's revenue office. You can look that up on Google, find it pretty easily, and start to get some traction. If not, you can reach out to some people at the state or city revenue office. Now, of course, these policies vary from state to state and honestly country to country, wherever you might be watching this from. You just want to be sure that you're doing things the right way from the start so that there's no complications down the road or headaches that you have to deal with later on. Okay, so just kind of get your ducks in a row from the very beginning, and that's going to save you a lot of potential headaches and trouble down the road. Tip number 15 kind of goes along with that, but I'd recommend having some sort of bank account specifically set up for your business because this is going to make life so much easier when it comes tax time. So you want to make sure that all of your business expenses are coming out of this account so that when you're trying to think of tax write-offs and possible deductions, it becomes very easy to calculate everything that you can claim for your business. So getting yourself organized from a business standpoint is going to save you time on these mundane admin type of tasks, and it's going to leave you more time for the fun aspects of your business. Tip number 16 is to put effort into your shopping bags. I know that, again, this is sort of a basic tip, but you have to understand that when a shopper makes a purchase from your booth, they're going to walk around the rest of the event, and they're essentially going to be advertising your business if you choose to design the right bags. The first thing that you want to be sure of is that you choose the right bag. Do you sell something formal or high-end? Maybe a black bag would be a good fit. Or do you sell something rustic or country-themed? Then you can't go wrong with the classic brown, paper bag. But is your booth mostly white and have bright colors? Think about the booth that I showed you earlier, Made by Moonlight. That might be a good pick to have white bags. Just be sure that you choose the right bag for your business. Second, you absolutely need to have a logo on your bags, and big, so that other guests can see where people are shopping and buying from. Again, it's kind of like that free billboard that's going around the event if you're making sales. Finally, you can consider dressing up your bags. So, for example, if you're at a holiday event, you can buy some sort of festive ribbon or maybe tie a bow onto the handle of the bag. This is just one of those easy ways to inject a little bit of extra flavor and personality into your bags at very little cost to you. So like an entire spool of ribbon, that's like $1 or $2, maybe if you get it from the right spot. So this is just a way to inject a little bit of flavor and personality into those bags. Now, the bottom line, of course, is that your bags can go a long way in helping to drive some extra traffic to your booth during an event, and you want to make sure that they're functional so that you can protect the purchases that the customers have invested into you. So don't overlook how impactful this upgrade of a bag can be at your booth. Tip number 17 is to tell your story as a creator at your booth. So whether you create some sort of story card and hand them out at your booth, or you create a sign that's just permanently posted at your booth, you want to be sure that you're sharing your story as a maker because this matters to shoppers. It's part of the magic of shopping at a craft fair. You get to meet the makers. And to know their backstory and inspiration behind their creations, it's going to make a purchase even more special, and it could sway some customers from purchasing from you if they're able to connect with your story. So definitely consider having this posted somewhere at your booth or as a handout that you can give if you're more of an interactive vendor with shoppers at your booth. For tip number 18, we're going to be talking about feedback, and you've got to be willing to understand and adapt to feedback as a vendor. And keep in mind that feedback comes in many forms. It's easy to focus on verbal feedback, whether it's positive, neutral, negative. Just make sure that you're putting equal weight into both the positive and the negative feedback because there's value in all of that information. Seek information as to why someone expressed themselves in a positive or negative manner. However, you should also look beyond verbal feedback. Look at people's physical demeanor around your booth. What are they looking at the most? So what do people kind of walk up to and approach the most? Do people look at something in particular and approach the booth? Or maybe they look at something and keep walking? Okay, so look for that too. People's posture and physical actions can say a lot, so you don't want to overlook this as a potential source of feedback. You should also consider social media and the reactions that you get to certain posts. This is another form of feedback. Just make sure that you're making the most of every opportunity to assess based on information that is at your disposal. All right, so now we're going to dive into a series of suggested tips from various followers that I have throughout social media, whether it's on YouTube or TikTok or Facebook. I kind of just put it out there to get some recommendations on tips that could be part of this video. So for the remainder of the video, we're going to get some feedback from a few friends here and there. So the first one that we're going to talk about is from Sarah H, and you can find her on TikTok at That's So Sarah. The suggestion is to bring a small garbage can to put under your table for any trash accumulated during the event. Leaving your space looking clean after you pack up your booth will pay dividends for your reputation with the event organizers, and by also having a trash can hidden at your booth, this will keep you from leaving your booth to toss something away. So basically, more time at your booth equals more potential for profits. So this is a great suggestion. I really like this one. Obviously, as a former organizer, I definitely appreciate all the vendors who cleaned up after themselves and left things in a good condition. That made a good impact on me as an organizer. So that's something that you want to keep in mind as a vendor. Okay, and the second tip that we had from Sarah H is to make sure that you have a couple of different low price point items located at your checkout stand. This will help with last minute impulse purchases as customers are getting ready to check out. This is a fantastic suggestion, something that we really haven't talked a lot about on the booth review series or really on the channel in general. So I really wanted to include this one in the video because this is something that we see again, kind of like in a retail environment where you're in line getting ready to check out and they have like those little kind of knickknacks and those little last minute impulse buys that you can pick up. And there's a reason why they're there. There's a reason why that square footage is being utilized for this purpose because it works. So think of how you can incorporate this into your craft fair booth to push those last minute impulse purchases. All right, tip number 21 is from Mac and Bree. You can find them on YouTube, Mac and Bree Make on YouTube. Don't take sales personally. Sometimes your items just don't vibe with a potential customer, and that's okay and probably not even on you. For example, they were next to a jeweler during one craft fair. A customer was browsing the jeweler's table, but they suddenly announced, "No, I have enough jewelry already. I shouldn't buy any more jewelry." And they left in a hurry. So you got to understand that that had nothing to do with the jeweler, with the vendor, and it had everything to do with the customer. Okay, so sometimes things just aren't going to work out. It's just not the right match for what type of items you're selling, not even specifically designs that you have or things like that. All right. So again, don't take sales too personally. That's a fantastic tip. Thank you, Mac and Bree, for that. And glad to include it in the video. Next tip number 22 is from Raven from Super K on YouTube. Have a way for people to remember your products with your business name. For example, Anna's Boutique means nothing to me, but Anna's Boutique with a picture of a product they're known for reminds me why I grabbed their card. This is an excellent tip. Pairing some kind of a visual with that business name in your marketing materials, that goes such a long way, you guys. So again, just having the business name, sometimes that might not be enough to trigger, okay, why did I pick this card up, or who was this again? But having that visual paired along with it, that can really sort of trigger that memory and that connection that they had with you or something at your booth. All right, tip number 23 is from my guy Brian. You have seen him on the channel before in the booth review series with Studio 506, and you can find him on Facebook at BGH506. First tip from Brian, have a conversation with a potential customer without pitching them. This is really important, and especially if you're not really yet comfortable with that vendor to customer, sort of verbal engaging experience that, you're going to encounter with the general public. Sometimes you kind of just force the pitch. You're just pitching, and it can get a little bit repetitive. It can get a little bit too direct for some customers. Some customers just want to, talk or whatever and just keep things a little bit more low key and relaxed. So this can help a lot of people out. And sometimes you can just feel your way through a conversation. And if it sort of feels like the customer is steering things a little bit more towards your products and you can kind of get into pitch mode based on what they're saying, then great, the door is opening up for you and you can go down that road. But yeah, you can play it by ear, and sometimes you don't have to pitch everyone. Sometimes you can just have a conversation with customers. So great tip, Brian. Really appreciate this one. Second tip from Brian, overall tip number 24 in the video, don't hop on the bandwagon of what is hot, build your own unique items. So this is a good tip that I think a lot of people are kind of getting sucked into a little bit more, especially with kind of like the push of TikTok and the push of social media in general getting bigger and bigger and kind of becoming more of our lives as the years go on. It's easy to hop on trends. It's easy to feel like you have to really get on that bandwagon and be a part of it and strike while the iron is hot. But you got to keep in mind that this is generally going to be some kind of a very short burst. And after that, it's going to fizzle out and fall off the cliff very hard. So is that worth it? Probably not. For a lot of vendors, it's probably not going to be worth it to just try to keep jumping on bandwagons and sort of not having a consistent identity at your booth. That's one thing that you want to establish at a craft fair booth, and for a small business in general, is you want to have some sort of foundation, some grounded consistency that people can kind of rely on so that they know what to expect with your business and things that you might be offering at your booth. Yeah, you can mix in some things here and there, but just make sure that you aren't prioritizing that and making your identity just jumping on different trends. All right, so the final tip from Brian is if you do demonstrations, finish the demonstration even if they say no or if they keep walking past you. You want to kind of complete this cycle of a demonstration. First of all, yeah, there might be somebody kind of right in that direct vicinity who may lose interest, or maybe they decide it's just not for them. That's fine. However, you might not realize that people in your peripheral vision or just in the general vicinity might be engaged with what you're doing. And if you sort of stop just because one person lost interest, well, then you don't know if that's having an impact on other people around you. I really like this tip because it's just showing that Brian is considerate of not just the one customer. He's trying to consider everybody around him and the impact that it might have. And this is definitely one of those mindsets as a successful vendor that you want to have, is that you want to just make sure that you're doing things so that it impacts the greater good of everybody around you. So this was 25 different tips to set you up for success in 2025 as a craft fair vendor. I want to thank everybody who submitted ideas on all social media platforms, not just the vendors who kind of made the cut and got their tip into this video, but everybody. I mean, if you look at the post I made from these, this was about a couple of months ago, so maybe December of 2024, I started making these posts somewhere in there. There's so many different comments on all these social media platforms from people who chimed in to try to offer up help and try to help one another as vendors. And that's what this channel is all about. So I love that. Thank you guys all so much for being a part of this and chipping in. If you liked today's video, please remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We have big goals on this channel that we're trying to reach, and the more people that we reach, honestly, the better off craft fairs are going to be. So thanks again for watching. Have yourselves a great day.